Hello, welcome back to Misty Island and Krudius' story. So in the last episode, the group of heroes have finally traveled up to the fortress at the top of the mountain to confront Agth and to try to make her break the curses in one way or another. And they raided her storage, took all of the reagents that she had, and they also met Walter and found out that he's a zombie and not someone who can help them very much. He's rather someone who needs their help in the end. He did tell them where the liquor is kept though, the nectar. And Krudius very nearly succeeded in spiking Agth's drink, but she appeared before he could do it and also revealed that she is the one who summoned Krudius to this island in the first place. And she's basically been waiting for him to do whatever it is he is going to do in order to break the curse on the island. Of course, Krudius has no idea what that could be. So Krudius is going to call up to Agth. I'm supposed to break the curse? What are you talking about? How am I supposed to do that? And Agth is walking down the staircase, laughing at him and saying, perhaps you need a little encouragement. So she's going to cast a curse, and it is the Servantus Attaccum. And a servant of Agth is summoned into the room, and it's gonna go up to Krudius and attack him. And while that is going on, Iveria is gonna go up to Agth and tell her, you don't have to do this. If you just stop and listen, maybe we can work this out together. But Agth just laughs at her and tells her, I had forgotten what a high-pitched, grating voice you have, my dear. I liked you far better as a rabbit. I'm just gonna cast a curse on her. And Iveria is a rabbit once more. And Agth takes this in, and as she is turning around, Roger is running in what looks like blind panic from behind her, and is escaping into this room here. And so she laughs and says, yes, run, you coward. And so Agth turns around again, takes in the chaos she has just created, and turns her gaze to look at Audrey. And she narrows her eyes and says, you little traitor, all this time that I've spent training you, wasted. All of that potential and nothing to show for it. Well, perhaps it's time to make the final decision, Audrey. Sink or swim? So she turns to the girl, casts yet another spell. And it's the Expello Simae curse. And Audrey is teleported off the island. And Krudius, who has finally overcome the Dark Servant, runs up to Agth. And he frantically asks, what did you do to her? And Agth tells him that, oh, I just sent her into the sea. Audrey was never a strong swimmer. Perhaps this will teach her to use her powers properly. Or perhaps not. And Krudius exclaims, you monster! And he turns his wand on her and is gonna cast the neutral knockout curse. And Agth is filled with exhaustion and is collapsing next to him, completely knocked out. So Krudius steps away and takes a look at her as she's standing there. And he is thinking to himself that he could end this right here, right now. He could end her life so easily, knocked out as she is. But then he remembers his promise to Iveria to try everything before resorting to murder. And is remembering the battle with his old master and how close he came to submitting to the darkness and becoming a dark warlock. And he steps away further and gathers himself. He realizes that he must do something else. So he picks out the bottle of which began E, and he turns around, readying himself to pour it down her throat before she wakes. But before he has the chance to do so, Agth rouses herself, and before Krudius can react, she casts another spell. is the Mellifera attackum. Krudius is being chased by bees, running all through the fortress as Agth is laughing at him. And she's telling him that she's growing tired of his games. She doesn't care anymore what he was supposed to do about the curses. He's obviously too weak to do anything of use. So Agth raises her wand, readying herself to finish him off. But before she can do so, the zombie is coming up from behind her and is attacking her. And he pulls her to the ground, and there's sickening crunches and yells of fear and pain. And they're battling it out. And Agth is felled to the ground. And she's passing away. She's eaten by the zombie, and she did not survive that fight. And as Walter is mourning with sadness and also with quite a bit of relief his wife's passing, he also chokes on the terrible poisonous flesh that he's just eaten, and chokes and passes away as well. And Krudius watches this and realizes that even though it's very sad, this was probably a better end for Walter than being kept here alive for all eternity as Agth's slave. And as Agth is finally passing away, with Grim in the background here, also Krudius turns to look at Iveria. And he sees that she's transformed back into a human again. And with that, Agth's curse is broken. And Roger walks up to Krudius and says, "That went better than expected." And then he hurriedly tells Krudius that he saw Audrey down at the water at the edge of the cliff. There's a small beach down there, and they need to hurry if they want to save her. And Iveria is hurrying up to Krudius and is telling him that we could try to fly down there, but it might take too long. Do you think you can teleport all that way? And Krudius says, "I'm gonna have to. Let's hope it works." And with that, Krudius is hurriedly teleporting out of the fortress and down to the beach in order to save Audrey. And Krudius teleports and appears at the ocean edge, further than he's ever teleported before. And he walks up to the water, and he can see Audrey out in the waves, trying to make it back onto shore, but being incapable of doing so. Whenever she's getting close to the shoreline, a wave is pulling her back out again, and she just can't find the strength to climb onto shore. And Krudius tries to walk up into the water and help her, but he can feel the barrier is still in place around the island, and as he looks out over the water, he can see that the mist is still all around the island. That has not disappeared after Agth died, as he had theorized. So Krudius is trying to summon Audrey to his side using his magic, but it won't penetrate the wall. There's no way that he's gonna be able to use his magic to get Audrey back, and Audrey is not gonna be able to make it back on her own. So Krudius knows that there's only one thing that he can do, and he puts his hand into his pocket and pulls out the bottle of Witch Begone E that he has prepared. And he drinks the whole bottle and is no longer a warlock, and he can feel that the barrier around the island is no longer preventing him from walking through it. So he throws off his heavy wizard's robes and is wading out into the water. And with Krudius' help, Audrey finally manages to make it back onto shore. But Krudius is not following her. An undercurrent is catching him, pulling him back under over and over again. There's no way for him to get back onto shore. The waters are just too wild. And Audrey sees this and turns back to him and calls out for him to come back. But the waves keep bringing him under over and over again. So Audrey desperately cries out for him. She closes her eyes as tightly as she can and wishes with all her might for Krudius to be safe, to make it back onto shore. And she can feel something rush through her. Something is changing in the winds, and Krudius finds that he can finally make it back up onto shore and back to safety. And Audrey runs up to him and wraps him in an embrace, terrified and crying, and so relieved that he's back to safety. And Krudius tells her, "Well done, Audrey, you saved my life." And Krudius straightens and takes a second look at her, and he realizes what it is that's been bothering him ever since he heard Iveria's part of the story. He did understand that there were 3 different kinds of mages that were casting spells that night. A neutral one, a good one, and an evil one, and that all of their curses and spells mixed together and created this chaos. But he had been thinking that it was too specific. It was all based on fear. And Krudius now realizes that those 3 were not the only magical beings in place that fateful night when the mist first came. Audrey was also there, and she must have been absolutely terrified at what was going on around her. So Krudius turns to Audrey and tells her that, "I know what can break the curse on the island. Your mother's magic is gone, and Iveria has cast the spell to release the island as well. And now your grandmother has also passed. The only thing remaining is to lift the final curse. The reason why the mist is still here is that it's tied to your wishing magic and the strong sense of fear that you felt that night. That is what cursed all of the inhabitants on the island with their worst fear. And that is what we must use now in order to break this once and for all." And Audrey asks him, "What must I do?" And he tells her that you just have to do the same thing that you did in order to get me out of the water, or to get the bookcase back into a secret passage, or in order to become visible again when you had been invisible. You need to think about something that makes you feel safe, something that you want really, really strongly, and then you'll be able to lift the curse." So Audrey nods her head and steps away, looking out at the mist, looking up at Krudius, and she's closing her eyes, and she's thinking about everything warm, everything that feels like home. And in front of their eyes, the mist and fog is lifted. The curse is gone from around the island. The sun is shining brightly, and the oppressive feeling that's been over all the island is gone. So Krudius walks up to Audrey and tells her, "Well done. You did it. You lifted the curse." And Audrey tells him, "It was easy. I knew exactly what to do." And Krudius asks her, "Well, what were you thinking about then?" And Audrey grins up at him and tells him, "I was thinking of you." And Krudius doesn't know what to say to that. And as it turns out, he doesn't really have to say much either, because Iveria arrives at that very moment. And she takes a look at them and says, "Well done, you did it." And Krudius tells her, "It was all Audrey. She saved us all." And with that, with Iveria's help, they will return back home. So they return to the Cresclium house, and outside of its doors they find Roger waiting for them. So Krudius walks up to him to tell him what has happened. And of course Roger is thrilled to hear about the solution. to the issues and how they managed to finally expel the mist from the island. He tells them that he can't wait to go back to the lighthouse and try it out to see that everything works as it should. And Roger turns to Krudius and asks him, well, now everything is done. You have helped everyone and the mist is not here anymore. You're free to leave. What are your plans now? Where will you go? And Krudius turns back to Audrey and to Iberia. And he looks at them, smiles, and says, not going anywhere. I've come home.